Welcome to video 3 in this MLB workbook series. This is part 1 of the numerous machine learning videos that will follow, and it's an introduction to the estimator. The estimator is basically all the tools under the estimator button on the workbook that deal with predicting future fantasy sport outcomes. In previous videos, we've talked about how you can add value to a simple mathematical optimization. We've talked about application of filters, such as filtering out lower salaried players or players based on their level of experience, or players who are injured, teams that have weather issues, or teams who just don't want to bet on. We've also talked about using your own knowledge of the sport to pick your favourites. Everything from this point onwards will be about obtaining the most accurate fantasy point projections available for future games. So one thing that is worthy of discussion is that fantasy point data sets are basically high variability, and they are not easy to predict with pinpoint accuracy. Far from it. It all has to do with the butterfly effect and the fact that that outcomes are not totally predictable. All we have to do, though, is get a competitive edge on the other players. We have to be slightly better in the prediction department so that we are always playing with an edge. And in a 50-50 match, that old adage about being in the woods with a fellow camper and a bear is chasing you does apply in this case. We only have to be We don't have to outrun the bear, we only have to be faster than the other camper to succeed, and that's very much the same in this situation. Our predictions have to be marginally better than everyone else's to give us an advantage. So we have a number of options available in the estimator. Generally speaking, option 1, use historical averages, is a good way, as we'll prove mathematically in a future video. It's a fair way to predict, and it gets you there, gets you most of the way there, and that's why FanDuel and DraftKings use that method. So we've already dealt with that in the quick start guide, and incidentally, everything else beyond this point is FanDuel only. If this system becomes popular, it's relatively new at the moment. If it becomes popular and there's a demand for it, we'll expand it to DraftKings and others. But at this moment in time, it's just FanDuel. So moving on to number 2, we can use the ExcelDFS.com crowdsource predictions. Now, basically, just look at this schematic. This is how it works. A number of users will periodically present their predictions. It's very simple. You just press a button to share your predictions, and if the API considers them to be, after a certain period of time, a reliable source of data, any future predictions that they share before noon Los Angeles time have a very good chance of being incorporated into the crowdsourced prediction data set that is returned to the network. So basically, users offer their predictions. If they have a reputation for being accurate, they are averaged into the crowdsourced prediction, the top X number of prediction sets received before noon Los Angeles time, and that time may have actually changed. I'd have to check the server now, but we're trying to optimize it, because some people like their predictions a little bit earlier, but basically the idea is we get good stuff in. Let's say you get 100 in, the top 5 might be taken if the reputation of the transmitters is good, and that will come out as the crowdsourced prediction. So let's just take a look at that and how we actually do that in the program. Okay, so let's go to the estimator. We noticed here that under the player's name column there's nothing. That means we haven't loaded any data. So let's just go here. Let's import today's FanDuel data file. Okay, quick look at what we have today. Okay, that looks promising. 18 teams. Okay, it's a great day for mathematical optimizers. So let's just go here. Without further ado, let's run the filters. And we've already set certain defaults in, which we covered under the Quick Start guide. Okay, so now just a simple mathematical optimization of the data file gives us that that bet. Now, if we want to operate on a different level with a different prediction set, first thing we should do is just go to the estimator and press crowdsource predictions. You'll notice that this column here always contains any prediction that's ready to go over to the solver. So before it goes to the solver, it's always dumped here. That will become more significant as we progress. So now it says, would you like them transferred to the solver? Well, yeah. Yes. Transfer complete. So now what we have is from the crowdsourced predictions, we go back to the solver and we have to run the filters again. And what we should find, unless the system is rigged, is that we have a different optimization now. Okay, so according to ExcelDFS for today, we do have a significantly different bet. Now, obviously, we wonder which is most accurate. One way of getting a feel for that is to go to the leaderboard. If you look at the leaderboard, we mentioned earlier that many participants are presenting their prediction sets. And by the way, I don't want to do it now, but if I shared my predictions, whatever's in that column would be uploaded as my predictions for the day. I don't want to do it, of course, because I would just be feeding back, and I only get one shot per day. I would just be feeding back those numbers. The advantage of doing that is you get your predictions graded for accuracy by the API. So, for example, Mave incidentally is a bot. You can guarantee that anything prefixed with bot is it's actually a genetic algorithm. I run a farm of these, and the reason for that is because although we'd like more people to share, a lot of people don't share, so we always need enough reliable participants to make the ExcelDFS predictions every day. So there's a bot, there's a bot. The other thing to look at here is Rotogrinders, great website, is they produce predictions on a daily basis, although they tend to hide them now. I don't think they advertise them, but they're still on their server. Rotogrinders is not, their predictions are not used in any way in the ExcelDFS prediction set. They're simply used as a guide. When you have a a world-class website like that, you want to know how your predictions stack up against it. And Rotor Grinders is always within the top 10, I would say, maybe top 15. Never drops below that. And if you notice, the field based on absolute error is very close. And incidentally, the absolute error is in fantasy points, and if you want to know what absolute error is as opposed to mean error, Wikipedia has a good page or two on that. So ExcelDFS is up there as far as predictions go. It's good. As a comparison of what it might be compared to the file, well, the FanDuel file is what's synonymous with it is moving average greater than 30. So at this moment in time, moving average greater than 30 is not significantly less than ExcelDFS. However, it is an alternative. So you've got two bets which come from different sources. Both are considered to be accurate. So it's a good way to hedge. Okay, so that is how you use the crowdsourced predictions. If you push this too early, it'll just tell you, sorry, not available yet, come back a bit later. Okay, so now let's move on to the next option. Okay, number 3 is to generate your own predictions using ExcelDFS functions. This is probably putting the cart before the horse, because you tend to generate your own predictions with formulae derived from linear regression. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the next video totally dedicated to a linear regression, and the one after that genetic algorithms, because they are two very large subjects. So let's just play with generating your own predictions and introduce you to functions, because functions are very powerful tools that will allow us to harness the power of the data set. Okay, into the estimator again. Now, before we start to talk about functions, we need to get the latest data. So before we do anything with functions, we press the update function data button. Now what this is doing is it's going out to the API and it's saying I need the latest data, and the way we access this data is through functions. And let me give you a quick intro to functions. There are two types of functions. There are Excel built-in functions, and there are user-defined functions, which you'll find in this help file, and they are all preceded by the MLB underscore name. So let's look at a typical Excel only function. 1, 2, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10. If I wanted to use a sum function to add these up, I would put equals sum, and then the argument or the parameter is the range, and that adds up to 10. So if you look at the formula here, I've actually used an inbuilt Excel function. I could also say, let's say number 8 equals square root, that's squirt of 8 equals 2.82. Let's change that to 9, that's easier to understand. 3. So the square root of 3 is 9. So those are two simple Excel functions that could be handy. Another function that we are going to have to come to terms with, and you might like to perhaps Google this separately, is the if function. So equals if, and the reason that this function is so valuable is it allows the conditional use of statements and logic in our formulas. I mean, so we could put simply, I don't know, dog, cat, tadpole, donkey. We could put equals if this, so this is the logical test, if that equals dog, then return canine. So the answer would be canine. But if it doesn't equal dog, it will be not canine. Now, this is what you get for winging these videos. Can you think of a more ridiculous example? Okay, so not canine. So a dog, so the function is saying that it's a canine, but these are not canines. Because that's such strained logic, and I can't process the words dog or cat, what I should probably do is put a number in. So if it's a canine, I want the number 1. If it's not a canine, I want -1. So all of a sudden I now have a valid numerical value to tell me whether it's a dog or a cat. Okay, I'm not even going to go anywhere near that example again, but that's basically an introduction to what I call a function. Now, the functions that we'll be using in conjunction with these, and this is one of the most important help guides in the whole workbook, are covering a multitude of things. For example, moving averages. Moving average, player's name and the number of games. If I put 5 in there, that's the average score for the last 5 games. I put 30 in, the average score for the last 30 games. Okay, that is equivalent to the above with the last game only, so it's moving average of 1. How many games the players played. Player facts, you can find out, for example, what team is on, who his opposition is for the match, the forthcoming match. You know, what hand he is, left or right. There's all kinds of stuff that you can find out using these functions. It becomes quite complex, as we'll see when we do regression analysis and genetic algorithms, but there's a lot of stuff that can really help you here. So let's just try and play with these. Let's make a simple prediction. One thing that will become apparent when we do other forms of machine learning is, whilst this is the column that gets uploaded to the server, so if I wanted to transfer that to the solver, oh dear, you know, I've done it again. This is why my leaderboard figure is so terrible. When I do these demos, where am I now? I must be, I'm number 78. I think I just uploaded, normally I upload a simple average or something. Anyway, right, so that's what gets uploaded to the server, or that is the column that gets transferred to the solver. That's an active column. When we do machine learning genetic algorithms, the output from the genetic algorithm comes to that column before you transfer it to the solver or you share your prediction or whatever. So that column has to be kept clear of any equations. The final result of any of your calculations, which will occur here, along this line must add up to this column here. So let me just do this. Let me try a simple one. Let's put in the first column. I'm going to say this is moving average 5. Let's say I am of the opinion that a player's ability is an average of his short-term performance and his long-term performance. So I would say the first one is MLB moving average fantasy points, player's name. Note, you never type in a player's name because everything is relative to this one line. You always have a reference, and that will be 5. By that I mean, let me just do something here. Let me take this. I've put moving average A4, which is this player's name. Let's say I hardwired it with Adam Engel. Okay, it's now 6.2. The problem is, when this is copied down in the calculation process, we will get the 5-game moving average for Adam Engel. We won't get it for AJ Ellis or Alton. So once again, although it still works, it would be an error in principle, and we have to basically put in there a horizontal reference. So the thing about that is, if I were to copy this down to here, it's changed, and the reason it's changed is because that is now A8, which is the reference to that guy there. So alright, so now I've got the moving average over 5 games. So in this one I'm going to put equals MLB moving average of this player for 30 games. So one thing I know immediately is he's been doing slightly less recently than he has over the long term, but he's almost the same. Another great thing, although this works in NBA, it doesn't work so well in thing, is now all of a sudden I have a trend. Long term, no, it wouldn't. It would be equals short term minus long. So his trend is negative. That's a derivative of these functions, but let's take that out now. So I'm going to say that my final score, once again, final scores in this column, equals that plus that divided by 2. So 6.8 is the average between that and that. And for those of you who know Excel, that was probably a difficult way of doing it. I could have just taken the built-in Excel function. I could have called it average of that range. And so now the formula is average. That's, once again, it's a function. So that function has a parameter of range, whereas this function has 2 separate parameters, name and the number of games. So anyway, I have a value. Now see this here, let me just flip it. I like to test, because this can take a long time in complex calculations. I'm going to calculate down the whole data set, and I'm going to calculate for all these folks. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. You notice what happened though? The column here, it basically said, okay, there's no logic in that cell, just 8.3, so I'll copy it down. What it did in this case was it says, okay, there's some logic here, and the logic is the logic is based on the top cell, and that is take the horizontal guy, Alton Air, and find his 5-game moving average. So what I did here was I just tested. I tested the top 20 and I'm comfortable with the way it's working. So look, so Adam Eaton has got 9.3 is my prediction, and that's based on a recent moving average of 5.3, whereas a long term is 13.3. So this guy's in a slump, I would say. So we know Adam's in a slump. What I didn't do though, and I'm about to do now, is I'm going to put one more bit of logic in. I'm going to say, well, this is my final score, my final prediction. I'm now going to carry it over to the live column. I hate it when it does that. Okay, let me just escape that. So I'm going to put in here equals, alright, I'll just put C4. Okay, so now that equals that. So the reason I'm emphasizing this is because when you're fully conversant on this system, you might have here your daily regression analysis, and it goes on for miles. Complex formula that you want to run every day, and when you do your genetic algorithm, the output is automatically fed from the algorithm to this column. You do not want your final score here, which often has complex calculations, to be overwritten by something else. So this is as far left as your calculation goes. The final score is here, and you simply link it to the output column, which is this one. So now let's just fill and recalculate the first 20, and you notice automatically that has changed, and this column all the way down equals that column. When you're happy with that, you just click that to all, and calculatable players takes a few minutes. Yep, I want to do it. So all you do now is you don't touch the keyboard, and you just watch. Oh, that wasn't so long. The green light, you wait till the green light came up. Now, predictions have been generated. Would you like them transferred to the solver now? I could just press yes. The alternative to pressing yes, well, I'm going to press yes anyway. So they've gone, right? Now you might say, this is the greatest. This is the peak of my intellectual prowess as far as predicting is concerned. So I'm going to share those with the world. Your predictions today, okay, I shared the stuff before, so it's not going to take any more from me. But also, if you've done some changes or something, you might just manually transfer it to the solver. So anyway, now this is my prediction, and so I'll go back to the solver. I will run the filters again like it says, and then I will run the solver. Okay, okay, so now I have my own little cooked up prediction there, which offers yet another option that I might like to bet. And once again, I could check how accurate I am. If I have a record of presenting stuff, I could look on the leaderboard. So if I was Leonid, then yeah, you know, I'm in the same ballpark as ExcelDFS, Rotor Grinder, so I'm going to value my own predictions. And once again, the great thing is these are all slightly different. They're equally valid bets almost mathematically, and they're all better than the file bet. But even then, you know, the FanDuel averages file bet still not bad. So this is how you sort of build up a matrix of bets. Now I'm going to leave this for now, because I think we're going to go to a totally separate video before we start to deal with how we get historical data for our linear regressions and how we actually run our genetic algorithms. So those will be the two next videos. So hope you learned something from this one, and we'll be back very shortly with the other videos. Thank you for watching.